The wind that evening was sharp and cutting, carrying with it the bitter chill of early winter. Snow had started falling slowly, dusting the narrow streets of the small town with a thin, white layer. The kind of snow that made the world look soft and silent but could sneak through the smallest gaps in clothing and chill a person to the bone. Michael, the shop owner, was standing behind the counter of his small grocery store, a place that had been in his family for generations. The wooden floor creaked under his feet as he shuffled behind the counter, arranging items that had just been restocked. Outside, the street lamps flickered, casting long shadows over the snowy road, and the wind whistled through the gaps in the old buildings. It was quiet, almost too quiet, and Michael felt a strange sense of anticipation he could not explain. He had lived in this town his entire life. He knew every face, every habit, every routine of the people who walked the streets. But tonight felt different. Perhaps it was the snow, or perhaps it was simply one of those nights when something felt about to happen. Michael wiped his hands on his apron and glanced out the window, noticing movement in the distance. A figure was walking slowly along the street, bundled in a thin coat that did little to protect her from the biting wind. Her steps were careful, almost deliberate, as if she knew the path well but was wary of the cold that nipped at her fingers and face. Michael frowned. It was unusual for anyone to be out at this hour, and especially unusual for someone to appear so delicate in such freezing weather. He hesitated for a moment, feeling a tug of concern, and then went to the door. Pulling it open, a small bell jingled overhead, announcing his presence, and the cold air rushed in, swirling around him. The woman was close now, and he could see her more clearly. She moved with a grace that caught his attention immediately. Her hair was tucked loosely under a scarf, and her eyes, when she looked up, seemed both familiar and distant. Michael's heart skipped a beat. There was something about her, something that felt like a memory he couldn't quite reach. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying more urgency than he intended. "You'll freeze out here. You shouldn't be walking in this cold with just that coat." The woman paused, turning to him with a slight smile that was both polite and weary. She didn't respond immediately, merely adjusting the scarf around her neck. Her fingers were bare, reddened by the cold, and Michael felt a surge of protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. He stepped closer, gesturing toward the warmth of the shop. "Come inside for a moment. You can warm your hands, even if just for a minute." She hesitated, and for a moment, he thought she might refuse. But then she nodded slightly and stepped inside. The bell chimed again, and the warmth of the shop met her like a gentle wave. Michael quickly moved to the heater in the corner, adjusting it so the room felt welcoming. The air inside was fragrant with the scent of fresh bread and dried herbs, small comforts that made the world outside seem distant and harsh. The woman looked around, her gaze drifting over the shelves stocked with canned goods, spices, and familiar household items. Michael watched her carefully. There was something in the way she moved, the subtle tilt of her head, the way her eyes lingered on certain things. He couldn't place it, but a feeling of recognition tugged at him, stubborn and insistent. "You shouldn't be out there alone," he said again, more softly this time, as if speaking the words could somehow protect her. "It's dangerous in this weather." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, there was silence. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "Thank you. I appreciate your concern." She hesitated, and Michael noticed a shadow cross her face, something that hinted at a story she wasn't ready to share. "I'm just passing through," she added, almost as if trying to explain away her presence. Michael nodded slowly, though he felt a strange unease. There was a familiarity about her, a sense that he had seen her before, somewhere in a past that had been quiet and long ago. He tried to recall, searching through memories that were buried beneath years of routine and ordinary life. The flickering street lamp outside threw shadows across her face, and he caught a glimpse of something, perhaps the curve of her smile, or the angle of her cheek that made his heart tighten. As she moved closer to the counter to pay for a few items, Michael couldn't help but notice the small details, the way her hands trembled slightly from the cold, the careful way she examined the products, and the hint of hesitation in her movements. Each detail felt familiar, like a piece of a puzzle he had once known but had forgotten. His mind raced, trying to place it. But the memory remained just out of reach. The shop was quiet except for the soft jingling of the bell and the occasional creak of the wooden floor. Michael's fingers brushed against the counter nervously, unsure of what to say next. Finally, he asked, "Do you want some hot tea?" "It's the least I can offer." The woman smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed to carry both relief and a hidden sadness. "That would be nice," she said, and Michael moved quickly to pour the water and prepare the tea. The warmth of the mug in her hands seemed to ease some of the tension, and Michael watched as she took small sips, each one careful and deliberate. As she drank, Michael's eyes wandered to her face, trying to read the emotions that flickered across it. There was a depth there, a quiet strength, but also vulnerability. He felt a connection, one that was inexplicable yet undeniable. The feeling gnawed at him, a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. Something almost like memory trying to resurface. He asked casually, "Are you from around here? I don't recognize you." The woman's gaze lifted, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, perhaps amusement. "No, I'm just passing through," she said again, though the words carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Michael nodded, though his mind was far from calm. Something about her presence stirred memories he hadn't thought about in years. He remembered faces from his past, fleeting moments of laughter and conversation, but none of them seemed to fit. And yet, there was a thread, delicate and persistent, that suggested he had known her long ago. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the windows and sending tiny snowflakes swirling against the glass. Michael glanced at the door, wondering if she would leave soon, and feeling a strange mix of hope and apprehension. He wanted to speak, to ask the questions that were forming in his mind, but he wasn't sure he could find the right words. Finally, he said, "You shouldn't be out there alone. If the snow gets worse, it could be dangerous." She nodded again, understanding in her eyes. "I'll be fine. Thank you for your kindness." Michael felt a pang of something, perhaps regret, perhaps anticipation, as he watched her prepare to leave. There was a hesitation in her movements, a small pause that made his heart beat faster. It was as if she, too, sensed something unspoken between them, a connection that neither could yet name. When she stepped toward the door, he felt compelled to speak again. "Wait," he called softly. She paused, turning slightly. "Take care of yourself out there." Her smile was brief, but it carried warmth and a hint of acknowledgement. "I will," she said, and then she stepped into the cold night. The bell chimed one last time, and the door closed behind her, leaving Michael standing in the warmth of the shop, staring at the empty street. The snow continued to fall, thickening the silence outside. Michael's mind was a swirl of questions and emotions, memories he could almost grasp, but could not yet fully remember. Who was she? Why did she feel so familiar? And why did he feel as though this encounter was more than chance? He returned to his counter, arranging items as if to distract himself, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The evening stretched on, quiet except for the occasional gust of wind and the soft fall of snow. Michael could not shake the feeling that something important had begun tonight, something that would change the course of his ordinary life. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of anticipation, a sense that the past and present were about to collide in a way he had never expected. And though he did not yet know the reason, he sensed that when the truth revealed itself, it would be a moment he would never forget. After the mysterious woman left his shop, Michael stood by the door for a long time, staring out at the snow-covered street. The bell above the door had stopped jingling, and the world outside was quiet, as if holding its breath. He could still see her figure fading into the distance, her thin coat barely protecting her from the cold. Something about her lingered in his mind, refusing to be dismissed. He returned to the counter slowly, but every movement felt heavy, weighed down by the strange pull of recognition he couldn't quite place. He tried to focus on his work, organizing cans and checking inventory, but his mind kept wandering back to her. There was something familiar in the way she moved, the way she carried herself, the subtle curve of her shoulders. Michael shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling as imagination, but it stubbornly remained. He had lived long enough to know that sometimes the heart notices things the mind cannot yet explain. That night, the wind outside grew fiercer. Snow drifted in patterns that made the streets look like a white sea, soft and endless. Michael could hear it tapping against the windows, and it reminded him of memories, long-forgotten childhood, days spent playing in snow with friends, laughter echoing through empty streets. But this memory felt different, sharper, as though it was connected to the woman he had just seen. The next morning, Michael opened the shop as usual, the door creaking under his touch. The streets were quieter than normal. Footprints from the night before were barely visible under a fresh layer of snow. He thought about her again and wondered if she had returned. The possibility filled him with both hope and anxiety. He was cautious by nature, a man who trusted few, and had learned to live with quiet routines. But there was something about her that challenged his caution, urging him to notice, to pay attention, to perhaps act in a way he hadn't in years. Hours passed, and the shop received a few customers. Neighbors stopping by for bread or milk. Michael greeted them politely but found himself distracted, glancing at the door every time it opened. Each unfamiliar face caused a flicker of anticipation, a brief hope that it might be her again. But no one was. The day moved slowly, the quiet of the town amplified by the snow and the absence of the mysterious woman. Then, as the afternoon approached, she returned. Michael saw her first through the frosted glass of the shop window. She moved with the same careful, deliberate steps, scanning the street before approaching the door. Her coat seemed thinner than the weather required, and she moved with a grace that seemed almost deliberate, measured. Michael's heart beat faster, and he felt a strange mix of relief and nervousness. She entered the shop quietly, the bell chiming softly. Michael quickly approached, trying to mask his curiosity with politeness. "You're back," he said, almost incredulously. "Are you sure you're okay in this cold?" The woman smiled faintly. "I had to come back," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of purpose he could not yet understand. "I wanted to see something again." Michael nodded, though his mind was racing. "Would you like some tea again?" he offered. "Or perhaps something warm to eat?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Tea would be lovely. As she moved toward a small table by the window, Michael noticed how familiar her movements felt. There was a rhythm to them, a subtle grace that tugged at his memory. He busied himself with preparing the tea, trying not to stare too obviously, but he couldn't help it. The way she tilted her head, the faint smile playing on her lips, and the way her eyes seemed to scan the room as if searching for something all felt strangely familiar. They sat in silence for a few moments, the steam from the tea rising and filling the small shop with warmth. Michael found himself studying her, trying to place the feeling he had. Something in her face, the way her eyes met his, sparked a memory he had long buried. He couldn't recall exactly where he knew her from, but the sense of familiarity was undeniable. "Why did you come back?" he asked gently, careful not to seem too intrusive. The woman looked down at her hands, fingers wrapped around the warm mug. "I don't know," she admitted. "Perhaps I felt I needed to see something again. Someone. Maybe." Her voice was soft, carrying a weight of emotion that Michael could sense but not yet understand. Michael nodded, sensing that the conversation was delicate, that there was a story she wasn't ready to share. He chose not to press, instead offering quiet company, which seemed to soothe her. The snow outside continued to fall, and the shop felt like a small island of warmth and safety in a cold and lonely world. As they talked in fragments, Michael began to notice small details that made his chest tighten. Her hands were elegant, yet slightly rough from years of work. Her eyes held a depth of emotion, a mixture of strength and vulnerability that seemed strangely familiar. He recalled memories of someone he had known in his youth, a friend or family member perhaps, but the details eluded him. All he knew was that something about her presence resonated deeply, stirring feelings long buried beneath years of ordinary life. Time seemed to stretch as they exchanged small talk. The town outside remained quiet, the snow covering familiar streets in a blanket of white. Michael found himself asking questions he hadn't intended to, about where she came from, what brought her to this town, and how she had ended up here on such a cold day. Each answer was measured, careful, yet hinting at a deeper story he could sense but not yet know fully. There was a pause in the conversation, a moment of silence heavy with unspoken words. Michael felt an urge to bridge the gap, to say something that could make sense of the strange connection he felt, but he didn't know how. Instead, he let the silence linger, allowing her to feel safe, to perhaps reveal herself in her own time. The snow outside continued to fall, now settling thickly on the streets and rooftops. Michael glanced through the window and saw footprints forming as people walked by, but none that belonged to her. He felt a mixture of relief and worry. Relief that she had returned to the shop, and worry that she might leave again before he could understand who she truly was. Finally, as the light outside began to fade into early evening, she looked up at him. "I think I should go soon," she said softly. "The roads will get worse, and I don't want to get stuck." Michael nodded, though he felt a pang of disappointment. He wanted her to stay, to continue talking, to perhaps give him the answers he sought. "Take care on your way," he said, his voice gentle. "And if you need anything at all, come back. My door is always open." Quote. She smiled, a faint but genuine smile that seemed to carry gratitude. "Thank you," she said, then paused. "I think I will come back. There's something here I need to understand. Something I can't explain yet." With that, she gathered her few belongings and stepped toward the door. Michael held it open for her, watching as she disappeared into the snow once more. The bell chimed softly behind her, and Michael felt an emptiness settle in the shop, a quiet echo of her presence. He returned to the counter, his hands trembling slightly not from the cold, but from the realization that he was on the brink of something significant. The feelings stirred within him were complex, a mixture of curiosity, recognition, and a longing he could not yet name. He tried to focus on work again, but the shop felt emptier, the silence heavier. The snow outside muffled the world, creating a cocoon of quiet that made the encounter feel even more surreal. As evening approached, Michael found himself thinking back to small details. The curve of her smile, the way her eyes seemed to recognize something in him, and the strange familiarity of her movements. He could not shake the feeling that she was connected to a past he had almost forgotten, a memory lying dormant for years. His heart raced at the thought that tonight's encounter might not be mere chance, but something more profound, something that fate had arranged. Hours passed, and the shop grew quiet. Michael closed the windows to keep out the cold, but the warmth inside could not chase away the thoughts of her presence. He wondered who she really was, why she had come to this town, and why he felt such a deep sense of recognition. The answers eluded him, but the feeling persisted, a gentle tug at his heart that refused to be ignored. Finally, as the snow began to settle and the street outside emptied, Michael took a deep breath. He realized that he had experienced something unusual, something that had stirred long-buried memories and emotions. The encounter with the mysterious woman had left an imprint on his mind, a sense of anticipation for what was to come. He could not yet name it, but he knew that the story was far from over. As he locked the shop for the night, Michael glanced out at the snow-covered street one last time. The world was quiet, blanketed in white, but his heart was anything but. Something important had begun, something that promised to unravel mysteries and reveal truths he had long forgotten. And though he did not yet know what the future held, he felt certain that the next time she appeared, everything would change. The next day, Michael found himself waiting for her again. The snow had begun to melt slightly under the weak winter sun, leaving patches of slush on the streets, but the chill remained in the air. He couldn't explain why he felt a sense of anticipation that seemed almost urgent. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something that tugged at his memories and stirred emotions he hadn't felt in years. Every sound outside the shop made him glance at the door, hoping it might be her. hoping that the mystery of the last 2 days would finally begin to unravel. Hours passed slowly. Customers came in and out, but their conversations and familiar faces could not distract him. His mind kept returning to her, the way she had moved, the gentle curve of her smile, and the fleeting glances that felt as though she were searching for something or someone. Michael tried to focus on his work, arranging cans and restocking shelves, but it was impossible. The memory of her presence lingered, insistent and powerful, demanding attention. By late afternoon, the bell jingled again, and Michael's heart leapt. He looked up quickly and saw her stepping inside. Her thin coat had done little to protect her from the cold, and her cheeks were slightly flushed from the chill outside. She carried herself with the same quiet elegance as before, but there was something different in her eyes today, a mixture of determination and hesitancy. "Hello again," Michael said, his voice catching slightly. She gave a small smile, and for the first time, Michael noticed a flicker of emotion that he could not immediately place. "I had to," she said simply. "There's something I need to see, or perhaps to remember." Her voice was soft, carrying an undercurrent of emotion he felt in his chest. Michael gestured toward the small table by the window, and she sat down, her movements graceful yet careful. He moved quickly to pour tea again, noticing how her hands trembled slightly as they clasped the warm mug. There was a quiet tension in the air, a sense that something significant was about to happen. Michael's mind raced, trying to prepare himself for whatever revelation might come. For a long while, they spoke in fragments, small exchanges about the weather, the town, and the daily routines. Yet beneath the surface, Michael sensed an unspoken connection, a thread of familiarity that neither of them yet dared to name. Every now and then, he would catch her glance lingering on something in the shop, a jar of preserves, a stack of old newspapers, a corner that seemed to hold memories she was searching for. Each moment felt charged with meaning, as if the ordinary details of the shop were clues to a larger story that had yet to unfold. Michael's curiosity grew stronger with every passing minute. There was a memory at the edge of his mind, stubborn and elusive, hinting that he had known this woman before, but when he tried to grasp it, it slipped away like sand through his fingers. Still, he felt a sense of urgency, a pull that suggested he was on the verge of discovering something important. At one point, he asked gently, "Do you recognize this place? Have you been here before?" She paused, her eyes lowering to the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "I'm not sure," she said quietly. "It feels familiar, but I can't remember exactly. Maybe it's the town itself, or perhaps memories of someone I knew." There was a hesitation in her voice, a vulnerability that made Michael's chest tighten. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance between them, but he didn't know how to start. The afternoon sun shifted, sending long shadows across the floor. Michael noticed how the light highlighted her features, the delicate lines of her face, the expression that seemed at once distant and familiar. Something about the way she looked at him made his stomach twist with recognition. He could feel a truth waiting to be revealed, a moment that would change everything. But he had no idea how close it was. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke again. "There's something I need to see," she said slowly, almost as if she were testing the words on herself. "Something I think I've forgotten. Or perhaps something I've hidden from myself for too long." Michael leaned forward slightly, his curiosity and concern blending into an urge to help her uncover the truth. "What is it?" he asked softly. She hesitated, looking down at her hands, then slowly raised a cloth she had kept wrapped around her shoulders and face since entering the shop. It was thin, light-colored, and had hidden her features until now. Michael's breath caught. The moment felt suspended in time, the quiet of the shop amplifying the significance of her gesture. As the cloth slipped, revealing her face completely, Michael froze. Recognition struck him like a lightning bolt. The woman before him was someone he had known long ago. Someone he had thought lost to time. His mind raced, memories flooding back in fragments, the sound of her laughter, the shared secrets of childhood, the sudden absence that had left a void he had never truly filled. "It can't be," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Her eyes met his, wide and searching, as though she were looking for confirmation that he remembered her too. "Michael?" she asked tentatively, her voice trembling slightly. The world seemed to narrow to the two of them, the snow outside forgotten, the shop fading into the background. He could hardly believe it, and yet the truth was undeniable. She was the person he had known, the one whose absence had left an ache in his heart all these years. Recognition, disbelief, joy, and a flood of emotions crashed over him simultaneously. I thought I'd never see you again," he said, struggling to form the words. His hands shook slightly as he reached out, almost as if touching her would confirm she was real. She smiled, a mixture of relief and emotion shining through. "I didn't know if I would come back," she admitted. "But something made me return. I needed to see you. To see if you remembered." Michael nodded, swallowing hard. The memories returned in full. Now the moments of laughter, the shared adventures, the promises made and broken by time and circumstance. He remembered her completely. Every detail he had buried deep in his mind. And now it all came rushing back, vivid and overwhelming. They sat in silence for a long time, letting the realization sink in. Words seemed inadequate to express the flood of emotions between them. Michael felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, joy and regret, as he looked at the person who had been absent from his life for so long. The quiet snow outside mirrored the stillness of the moment, creating a space where past and present could coexist. Finally, she spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "I left because I had to. There were reasons I couldn't explain back then. But seeing you now, it makes everything clearer. I've never forgotten you, Michael." Tears pricked his eyes, unbidden and unexpected. "Neither have I," he admitted. "I never thought I'd see you again. All these years, He stopped, unable to complete the thought. Overwhelmed by the sudden return of someone so deeply connected to his life. The shop, the snow, the town, they all seemed to fade away as they shared this moment. Two people reunited, after years of separation. Michael could see the strength in her eyes, the resilience that had carried her through the years apart. And yet, beneath it all, there was the same familiar warmth he remembered, the same sense of connection that had drawn them together long ago. As they talked, sharing small details of their lives since they last met, Michael realized something profound. This moment was more than a chance encounter. It was a convergence of fate, a reminder that some connections cannot be broken by time or distance. The snow outside continued to fall, but inside the shop, warmth and light filled the space, carrying the weight of years and the promise of new beginnings. By the time the evening approached, they had begun to reconnect, rebuilding the bond that had been interrupted but never truly lost. Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years, a feeling that life, despite its hardships and separations, had brought him back to someone he had always cherished. And as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, illuminating their faces, he knew that this encounter, this long-awaited revelation, was only the beginning. There were stories to share, memories to relive, and a future to explore together, one built on the foundation of recognition, understanding, and the unspoken promise that some bonds endure forever. The evening outside had grown colder, the snow settling thickly over the streets, rooftops, and sidewalks. Inside Michael's shop, however, warmth lingered in the air, carrying with it a sense of comfort and connection that had been absent for many years. The woman sat across from him, her scarf now removed completely, revealing her face in full. Michael could not stop looking at her, at the familiar features that had haunted his memories for so long. Every line, every expression, was exactly as he remembered, yet shaped by the years apart. They sat quietly for a moment, letting the silence speak for them. It was a silence heavy with emotions, with memories, and the realization of a second chance. Michael finally broke it. "I can't believe you're really here," he said softly. I thought I'd never see you again. Not after all this time." She smiled, her eyes glistening slightly. "Neither did I," she admitted. "I wondered if you would even remember me. So much time has passed. And yet, here we are." Her voice carried both relief and an unmistakable warmth. It was as if the years apart had disappeared in an instant, leaving only the bond that had always existed between them. Michael leaned back in his chair, trying to take it all in. He remembered the moments of their past, the shared laughter, the secrets, the small adventures they had embarked on together. Each memory came rushing back, vivid and real, mingling with the shock and joy of the present. He felt a deep sense of gratitude that she had returned, and a quiet regret for the years they had spent apart. "I've thought about you so many times," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly. "I never stopped wondering where you were, what you were doing, if you were happy." She reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. "I wondered about you too," she said. "I often thought about coming back, but I wasn't sure if it was the right time, or if you would even want to see me." Her fingers were warm, and Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. They began to talk, first in small, careful sentences, then gradually opening up more. She told him about the places she had been, the experiences she had lived through, and the challenges she had faced. Michael listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or memories from their shared past. The conversation flowed naturally, like a river that had been dammed for years, but was now finally free to run. As the night grew darker outside, the world beyond the shop seemed to vanish. The snow continued to fall, muffling sounds and creating a sense of isolation, yet the warmth inside made the space feel safe and intimate. Michael realized that this was more than just a reunion. It was a chance to reconnect, to rebuild the bond that had been interrupted but never truly broken. At one point, they laughed together, a soft, genuine laughter that felt like it had been missing from their lives for far too long. It was a laughter that reminded them of who they were, of the friendship and connection that had existed before time had separated them. In that moment, Michael felt a weight lift from his heart. The years of waiting, wondering, and longing seemed less heavy now, replaced by hope and the joy of rediscovery. She paused, her eyes meeting his with a seriousness that contrasted with the laughter they had just shared. "There's something I need to say," she began. "I left because I had to. There were circumstances I couldn't explain back then, things I needed to face on my own. But leaving you, that was never easy. I thought about you every day." Michael nodded, understanding in a way that only someone who had longed for a person could. "I know," he said softly. "I never blamed you. I just hoped that one day, somehow, we would meet again." The air between them felt charged with honesty and openness. They shared stories of hardships, successes, small victories, and moments of fear. Each revelation brought them closer, building a bridge over the years that had kept them apart. Michael realized that despite the time, the distance, and the changes in their lives, their connection had remained intact. As the evening deepened, she looked around the shop, noticing small details she remembered from long ago: the worn wooden floor, the shelves stocked with familiar items, even the small bell above the door. It all felt like stepping into a memory, a space that had held significance long before she returned. Michael watched her, seeing the subtle emotions that crossed her face: nostalgia, warmth, and the hint of wonder at how some things had remained the same. "I feel at home here," she said quietly. "Even after all these years, it feels familiar. And yet, I feel like I'm seeing it with new eyes." Michael smiled, understanding completely. "Home isn't just a place," he said. "It's the people we care about. And having you here, it feels right." They continued to talk late into the night, sharing hopes for the future and acknowledging the past. They spoke about the possibility of seeing each other more often, of reconnecting not just in fleeting moments, but in meaningful ways. Michael felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years, the knowledge that the person who had once been part of his life was now back, and that together they could create new memories while honoring the old ones. At one point, she looked out the window at the snow-covered street, her expression thoughtful. "I used to walk these streets as a child," she said softly. "I remember the cold, the snow, and the quiet. But now, seeing it again, it feels different. It feels alive." Michael joined her at the window, looking out at the soft, white landscape. "It does," he agreed. "And sometimes, life gives us a chance to see the world in a new light, even if we've been away for a long time." The night grew colder, but inside, their hearts felt warm. Michael realized that this reunion was not just about recognizing someone from the past, it was about understanding, forgiveness, and the power of human connection. The years apart had taught them resilience, patience, and the value of presence. And now, they had the opportunity to embrace what they had lost and build something stronger. As she prepared to leave for the night, Michael walked her to the door. The snow had thickened, covering the streets in a soft white blanket, and the cold nipped at their faces, yet neither of them seemed to notice. The moment was filled with a quiet significance, a sense that this was not an ending but the beginning of a new chapter. "Will you come back?" Michael asked gently, a hint of hope in his voice. She smiled, a mixture of joy and certainty. "I will," she said. "There's more I want to share with you. More time I want to spend. This isn't the end, Michael. It's only the beginning." He nodded, feeling a surge of happiness and relief. The anticipation that had lingered for days was replaced with certainty and promise. He watched as she stepped into the snow, her figure fading slightly in the soft white light of the street lamps. But this time, he did not feel emptiness. He felt anticipation for the future, for the moments they would share, and for the memories they would create together. As the door closed behind her, Michael returned to the warmth of the shop, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The snow continued to fall outside, silent and steady. But inside, his heart was full. He knew that life had a way of bringing people together at the right time, even after years of separation, and that sometimes, the most unexpected encounters could change everything. He stood by the counter, looking around the shop, thinking about the journey they had shared, from the first surprising appearance to the moments of recognition and the heartfelt reunion. He realized that the past and present had converged in a way that was extraordinary. A reminder that connections built on love, friendship, and trust could endure despite time and distance. And as he closed the shop for the night, Michael felt a renewed sense of hope. The streets outside were quiet, covered in snow, but his heart was alive with warmth and possibility. The woman had returned, and with her return came the promise of new beginnings, deeper understanding, and the enduring bond of shared history. He knew that this chapter of his life would be remembered forever, not just for the reunion, but for the lessons of patience, hope, and the power of human connection. Michael stood by the window one last time, watching the snow fall gently, reflecting on how life had brought them together again. He realized that some meetings were meant to happen, no matter how much time had passed, and in that quiet, snowy night, he felt an unshakable certainty that the woman he had thought lost to time was now back in his life. And together, they could face the future with hearts full of warmth, understanding, and the joy of rediscovery. The night stretched on, but Michael did not feel lonely. He felt complete in a way he had not for years, knowing that some bonds are unbreakable, that love and friendship endure, and that even in the coldest and quietest moments, life has a way of bringing warmth and light. The snow outside continued to fall, soft and unending. But inside, the shop glowed with a sense of hope, a reminder that the most meaningful stories are often those that unfold quietly, patiently, and with heart.